Yeat is easily one of the biggest rappers to come in the game in recent years. His unique sound, persona, and brand have made him one of the hottest artists since the early 2020s. But one key thing acts as the backbone to all of Yeat's success: the insane production behind his songs. So in today's video, we're going to take a deep dive into all the crazy production techniques used across Yeat's hardest beats and take you inside the hard-hitting, synthetic, and catchy world of Yeat's production. For this video, I wanted to focus a little bit more on Yeat's newer sound, albums like Dangerous Summer in 2093, because I feel like his more classic rage sound has been covered a lot on YouTube, so I wanted to do something fresh. Anyways, by far my favorite song off of Dangerous Summer is Come and Go.
Yeah, come out and play.
I love that stabby synth progression that kind of drives the whole entire record. It's so simple but catchy at the same time. So I wanted to go for that sound, but with a little bit more of a hard and aggressive kind of edge to it. After watching Sopjair's breakdown of the melody, you can see that he used an analog synth one-shot from Rio Leva as the main sound for this pattern. So I grabbed a one-shot that I made on my Prophet 10 that's inside of my melody mastery kit, and I put down this simple pattern. Alright, so this pattern is actually super simple, even though it kind of, whenever you zoom out, looks like there's a lot of notes going on. It's really just a one-bar pattern repeating over and over. But we're not really using full chords in this as well. So the first thing that you're going to do is we're in C sharp minor. So I actually played this live. The first thing you're going to do is just put in an eighth note pattern like this with the root note. And then I just start building with notes on the scale, little melodies on top of that and on top of that, and then you duplicate stuff up an octave. So let me show you how we would do that. So I would put this note, which is 7 notes up, which would normally complete the minor chord like that, right? But we're gonna get rid of that note right there, right? Then I went down to right here, and I let this play right there. So now we have these constant notes going at the bottom right here, and we have this middle melody that's kind of going on. Dun, 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 dun. And then now I'm going to build a higher melody that's more close to this note. So boom. So now we're going dun, 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 dun. And then that's pretty much the whole pattern. And then from there, I took this root note and just put it up a whole octave like that. And then I grabbed these middle notes right here and put those down an octave. And then you get this. And then from there, you just want to mess around with moving stuff so it's not perfectly on time, so it sounds a little bit more human. And then you end up with this pattern. I wanted this to be the main element of the melody, just like it is on Come and Go. So I wanted it to be a little bit thicker. It felt just a little too thin with just that one sound. So I layered it 2 times, one more time with an E-piano sound, and another time with a synth sound from Arturia. And with all 3 sounds, you get this. Next up, I wanted to add something I've been loving in Yeat's newer stuff: a super bright and harsh saw synth bass. That type of bass sounds super sick, and it really adds to that whole futuristic and synthetic sound that Yeat has in his production. So to do something similar, I actually just grabbed the default saw wave from Omnisphere and put down this bass line in a super low octave. So to make this bass sound, as you can see, I literally just used the default patch of Omnisphere, but then I went in right here and I turned on the solo in the glide so that when you play it, it only plays 1 note at a time and it glides from there. See, if we have the solo off, it doesn't sound too good. And then for the bass line, to get a cool kind of sound, you want to do a lot of these like jumping up the high notes and then coming back down to that main note right here. So we have low right here, and then we have a little... So it's kind of going A and B, like low note for most of it, and then at the end of the pattern it goes up. And then right here at the very end, you can see that I added these super high notes, which is literally just the root note up 2 octaves, and then this note that matches this note right here up 2 octaves as well. And they're played really short, because if they're played super long like this, it's going to sound way too much. But now this is just a little texture. Next up, I wanted to take some inspiration from the super anthemic, almost brass sounding lead on Oh I Did. It's got this super distorted, harsh sound that just adds a ton of energy. I'm not sure exactly what sound this is, but that distorted and harsh texture just adds so much energy into the beat. So to get a similar sound, I found this haunted brass preset inside of Omnisphere, and I put a ton of distortion on it with my unreleased effects plugin, ToneFlex. Keep an eye out for that. Anyways, this is what that sounds like. Next up, I added one more lead sound just to add a little bit more variety, so there's different sections in the arrangement. So I grabbed this arcade token lead from Omnisphere and put down this catchy pattern. With that, the main section of the melody was done. You want to keep the melodies for these Yeat vibes super simple. You can even see Benny X praising Sabjir in the comment section of his breakdown on Come and Go. Benny X loved the simplicity on that loop because leaving room for artists like Yeat is super important because he uses his voice as an instrument. On a ton of his songs, you can hear these backing vocals that aren't even saying words, but they're just doing harmonies and kind of adding to the melody, adding to the instrumental.
You know it's this. Take a Perkin and talk it, that's it.
So since we have to leave space, we don't want to add any more sounds to this section of the melody. However, one great way to add complexity into your projects is by adding in B sections. So not a complete switch up, but you have different sections of the melody for different parts of the song, with each part being relatively simple instead of having all the sounds jammed together at once. And you can hear Yeat doing this a lot and having his beats and melodies evolve, especially on his 2093 album.
We've been overseas, but limo by the beach. Which time again, you always bluffing.
So I wanted to add a B section or switch up, whatever you want to call it, that takes inspiration from that 2093 dystopian, experimental, kind of industrial sound. And the first thing I did was grab one of the sounds that I used for those stabby hits in the first part of the melody, deleted the original MIDI, and then I put in more drawn out chords that give that cinematic vibe that 2093 has. Next up, I wanted to add a super distorted and ear-grabbing synth, kind of like the ones that you can hear on You Know and Loco.
Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
So I went into Omnisphere and grabbed this Slim Obese preset, which is a wild name for a preset, by the way, and I put down this simple dark pattern. Then, if you listen to the intro on Tell Me, you can hear this distorted guitar-ish kind of sound. It has this super evil and dystopian kind of vibe, and it perfectly fits that 2093 sound. So to get that kind of vibe, I grabbed this distorted lead from Oliver in Serum and added distortion and delay with my ToneFlex plugin to get this. Next up, I just followed that same exact MIDI that I just played on that dystopian guitarish kind of lead, but I just played it on a deep synth bass to just thicken up the melody on this section. And finally, I took some inspiration from a sound that Benny X used on Come and Go, the choir.
Spending bitcoins like it's pennies hope.
This choir adds a super nice vibe to the song, and even though this song is off Dangerous Summer, I felt like adding some sort of choir vocals in here would just make this part sound more cinematic and dramatic and kind of give off that 2093 vibe. So I went into Omnisphere to grab a choir, which, by the way, Omnisphere is great for choir sounds. And I put down this super simple descending chord progression that sounds like this. Once I had that, the melody was 100% done. So it's time to get into some hard-hitting drums to give this beat the energy that Yeat needs in a song. But real quick, before we get into the drums, I want to let you know that every single kit of mine is on a huge Black Friday sale right now, up to 80% off on everything I've ever released. So if you've been looking to get hard-hitting drum sounds, live instrument phrases, recordings from my live synths right here, non-recycled vocal chops, midis, presets for your favorite VSTs, etc., click the first link in the description down below to check out the Sonics Black Friday sale. Like I said, it's up to 80% 20% off. The deal will not get any better throughout the year. And if you don't know what to look for, I would highly recommend checking out the Drum Mastery Kit. I know I've been promoting it a lot recently, but I really believe in it. I really think it's the best drum kit that money can buy, and I'm actually going to be using it for every single sound in the drums for the rest of this video. So if you like what you hear, make sure to click the link in the description and go grab it while it's at a super low price. Anyways, let's get into the drums. To get the bounce started on these drums, I went for a hi-hat. And if you listen to songs like I'm Yeat and Flawless, you can hear that Yeat does use super simple two-step patterns in his songs.
If you see the money, that's Yeat. You see the money, that's Yeat. I ain't never take a Percussion and talk it, that's it. Money swallowing like this.
So that's what I'm gonna go for here, just kind of leaving some more room to do interesting stuff with the drums later on, instead of overcomplicating it with crazy hi-hats. So I put down a super simple two-step hi-hat and a snare, and here's what we get to start. Now that we got that, normally I would go and grab a super punchy 808, but in a lot of his stuff recently, especially with Benny X, you can hear that he doesn't use these super punchy 808s, but more of a subby bass 808 kind of thing paired with a hard-hitting kick. Take a listen.
If you see the money, that's Yeat. You see the money, that's Yeat. I ain't never big money, go up, go down.
We've also already got that saw bass going in the loop, so I thought that just kind of filling out the low end a little bit more with that subby 808 and a hard-hitting kick would work perfect. Kind of just trying to add on and fill out what the melody is doing and not trying to compete with it. So I copied the bass MIDI that we did on the synth line inside of the loop onto a subby 808, and then I followed that with a hard-hitting, busier kind of kick pattern. Real quick, I want to give you a super simple trick that works really well on these subby 808s to get this underground Yeat kind of sound. And specifically, it works really well on this EE sub bass from inside of Drum Mastery. I've been using this on that sound all the time. So if we listen to this 808 without it being boosted, it sounds like this. Nice and clean, right? It doesn't sound bad, but if you want that like dirty kind of, boost this just a little bit, because if you boost it too much, it's just like way too distorted. Boost it just enough that it starts to kind of fuzz up the audio, and then move the EQ knob up a little bit as well to distort it just a little bit more, but in a more subtle way. Now that sounds a lot more like gritty and dirty compared to this. Now that we got that sub 808 down, it's time to do something that is key to Yeat's sound, especially with producers like Benny X, adding multiple 808s or bass sounds. And in this beat, I ended up using 3 different 808s and basses. First being the main sub 808 that I just put down. And for the second one, I wanted to add a chase the money kind of 808. An 808 with that super fuzzy sound like you can hear on Talk.
Let me go, riding in that beat, let's talk the truth.
So I wanted to go for that sound without just straight up using a chase the money 808. So I went into the experimental 808 folder inside of Drum Mastery, which has a ton of super weird sounds, and I found this perfect one right here. And by the way, to make that one shot for the drum kit, what I did is I took an 808 and I threw it through a bit crusher, which is how I got that fuzzy tone that's kind of on top of the 808, because when you add a bit crusher, it downsamples the audio, but it adds this weird like jittery distortion on the high end. Anyways, the next 808 bass sound that I wanted to take inspiration from was Benny X's signature bass sound that you can hear really well on this song. Super fire and iconic to that Yeat sound. And like I said on the other 808, I didn't want to use this exact sound, but more just take that idea of adding accent 808s here and there in the pattern to spice it up so it doesn't just sound like one static sample going throughout the whole thing. So I grabbed this accent 808, and then I put 2 parts in the drum pattern where the sub 808 that we originally added cuts completely out, and one of these accent 808s takes its place. So I'm not layering these sounds on top of each other, but more doing a call and response with the 808s. And it really adds that Benny X and Yeat kind of sound to the drums. Now that we got that going, I wanted to pick the energy up a little bit by adding in some open hats, kind of like the busy and catchy open hats that you can hear on I'm Yeat.
If you see the money, that's Yeat. You see the money, that's Yeat.
I love this busier bounce on these open hats. I feel like it adds so much energy to the beat. So to do something similar, I grabbed 2 different open hats from Drum Mastery, as well as a little triangle perk sound, and I put down these patterns in our drums. Next up, I wanted to do some super fast one-step hi-hats that you can hear in a bunch of underground beats, kind of like the ones on They Tell Me. I wanted to take inspiration from that hi-hat, but honestly, when I tried to put it as the main drum sound in the beat, it just sounded too crowded and a little forced. So instead, what I did is I just added that little one-step idea at the end of every pattern, and it kind of works well to transition the end of the drum loop into the start of the next drum loop. Take a listen. Now, to finish up the first section of this beat, before we get into that 2093 cinematic kind of thing, where we'll do a drum B section, I wanted to do something crucial to Yeat's sound: beat stutters. These stutters and chops add so much energy into his songs, and there's countless other examples across his discography where the beats have this sort of effect. So let me hop in the screen and show you how I did it in our beat. All right, so as you can see here, to start the beat off, I have kind of this like 4-count intro where the beat just goes right 4 times in a row. But what I ended up doing is I ended up speeding it up. So the first 2 times it plays every half bar, and then it starts going to every quarter bar, and then at the end, it's every 8th note. So it keeps getting faster, kind of building up the tension until the beat finally drops. Then I did a stutter right here where I kind of chopped the loop up and I made the drums match what it's doing. So I have a super quick 8th note chop of the drums that sounds like this. And I've got this hitting in a unique kind of rhythm and the melodies being chopped up with it. Resolves right there back into the ending of the pattern before a new sound comes in on the loop. So using these beat stutters can be really good as like a transition from the first section into the second section where a new part of the melody comes in. And then later on in the beat, to transition out of this cinematic section that we'll break down in just a second, I added a little stutter right before that comes in with that melody to kind of bring that theme back, because it went in a completely different direction for this little switch. And I felt like it needed something to kind of bring back that main part. And as you can see, I followed that with the drums of this B section doing that. Now that we have that done, it's time to get into the drum switch up. I love the more experimental, acoustic-ish kind of drums that you hear on 2093, especially on songs like If We're Being Real and more.
I had a little low. I go back to Vegas, I go CEO. I got tired of this shit.
So I went into the experimental folder in Drum Mastery, which is perfect for these kind of drums. And the first thing I did was put down a kick that has a little bit more of a boomier kind of sound. It doesn't sound like a normal, super quick and clean trap kick. Then I wanted to add in a more interesting snare, like the ones that you can hear on As We Speak, Psycho CEO, and Tell Me.
The words I want you wrong. First come first, but come first, yeah, now some. Yeah, my diamonds on. Yeah, my money long. Yeah, my fly around the world. Married to the game.
I feel like the snare gives so much personality to the drums, and it really dictates what the drums on a beat feel like. So I wanted to make sure I got an interesting live-ish sounding snare to really nail that 2093 vibe. And after digging a while in the kit, I found this one. Got a super nice distorted and live-ish sound to it. So I put that with our kick, and you get this. Finally, to finish off those B section drums, I just added in a live hi-hat loop from Drum Mastery, which sounds like this. With that, the beat was 100% finished. But before I play it all the way through, which by the way, it came out crazy, quick reminder that all my kits are up to 80% off. So if you like how these drums sound, you want fire melodies like the one in this video, phrases with live instruments, vocals from Grammy-nominated vocalists, presets, MIDI, anything and everything you could need, all of the kits are up to 80% off. So if you want to level up your production, there is literally no better time to do it than right now. So go ahead and do yourself a favor and hit that first link in the description down below to check out the Sonics Black Friday sale. But anyways, let's hear this beat.